October 4th, 1997. Atlantic City, New Jersey. The Boardwalk Convention Hall. Two men stand in a boxing ring under the bright lights, their bodies glistening with sweat and determination. One is a champion, defending his title and his honor. The other is a hungry challenger with everything to prove and nothing to lose. In just a few minutes, these two warriors will engage in one of the most brutal, savage, and awe-inspiring fights in boxing history. They will trade punches that would knock out ordinary men. They will absorb damage that would hospitalize lesser fighters. They will push themselves beyond every limit of human endurance. And when it's over, one man will be unconscious on the canvas and the other will be crowned a champion. But both will be legends. This is the story of Arturo Gatti versus Gabriel Ruelas. The fight of the year. The night that Thunder Gatti was born. The war that couldn't be stopped. But to understand why this fight was so special, why it still resonates with boxing fans nearly 3 decades later, we need to go back. Back to where these two warriors came from. Back to the journeys that brought them to that ring on that October night. Because this wasn't just a fight, this was a collision of destinies. The Thunder from Montreal, Arturo Gatti, was born on April 15, 1972 in Cassino, Italy, a small town about 90 miles southeast of Rome. But Italy wasn't where Gatti would make his name. When he was still a young boy, his family immigrated to Montreal, Canada, searching for a better life in the New World. Montreal in the 1970s and 1980s was a tough place for immigrant families. Arturo grew up in the working-class neighborhood of Saint-Léonard, where Italian immigrants clustered together trying to maintain their culture while adapting to their new home. Life wasn't easy. Money was tight. The winters were brutal. But the Gatti family survived. Young Arturo was small for his age, but he had something inside him, a fire and intensity, a refusal to back down from anyone or anything. He got into fights on the streets, defending himself, defending his pride, defending his family's honor. He was tough, scrappy, fearless. When he was 10 years old, Arturo discovered boxing. Or maybe boxing discovered him. He walked into a local gym and found his calling. In the ring, his aggression had purpose. His toughness had direction. His heart had a home. Arturo's amateur career was solid but not spectacular. He won some, lost some, learned the craft. What set him apart wasn't his technical skills or his power. It was his willingness to engage, to fight, to never take a backward step. Even as an amateur, you could see it. This kid would rather die than quit. In 1991, at age 19, Arturo Gatti turned professional. His early fights were unspectacular. He won most of them, but he wasn't setting the world on fire. He was just another young prospect trying to make a name in a sport full of young prospects. But slowly, fight by fight, Gatti began to develop a reputation. He didn't just win, he put on shows. He would take 3 punches to land 1. He would get hurt and come back stronger. He would turn every fight into a war. The boxing community started to notice. This kid from Montreal had something special. They started calling him Thunder. Thunder Gatti. Because when he fought, it sounded like thunder. The crack of leather on flesh, the roar of the crowd, the storm of violence he brought to every ring. By 1997, Gatti had compiled a record of 27 wins and 2 losses. He was ranked in the super featherweight division, 130 pounds, and he was ready for his big moment. He was ready for a world title shot. He was ready for Gabriel Ruelas, the Mexican warrior. Gabriel Ruelas was born on June 29, 1971 in Iguala, Guerrero, Mexico, a city known for producing tough, proud, fighting men. Boxing was in Gabriel's blood. His family lived and breathed the sport. Gabriel wasn't alone in his boxing dreams. His younger brother, Rafael Ruelas, also became a professional boxer. The Ruelas brothers trained together, pushed each other, dreamed together of championship glory. It was them against the world. In 1988, at age 17, Gabriel turned professional. Unlike Gatti's slow build, Gabriel's rise was meteoric. He had speed, power, technical skill, and that intangible quality that separates good fighters from great ones, the heart of a warrior. Gabriel won fight after fight, demolishing opponents with his aggressive style and heavy hands. He wasn't just winning, he was devastating people. By 1993, just 5 years into his professional career, Gabriel Ruelas got his shot at the WBC super featherweight title. On March 6, 1993, in State Line, Nevada, Gabriel Ruelas fought Jesse James Leah for the vacant WBC super featherweight championship. It was a brutal back-and-forth war, the kind of fight that would become Gabriel's trademark. In the second round, Gabriel caught Leah with a devastating combination and stopped him. At age 21, Gabriel Ruelas was a world champion. He defended his title once in 1993, twice in 1994. But then something happened that would change Gabriel's life forever. Something that would haunt him. Something that would add weight to every punch he threw, every decision he made, every moment he spent in the ring. The tragedy that changed everything. May 6, 1995, Las Vegas, Nevada, the MGM Grand. Gabriel Ruelas was defending his WBC super featherweight title against a South Korean fighter named Jimmy Garcia. It was supposed to be a routine title defense. Gabriel was the heavy favorite. The fight started well for Gabriel. He was faster, stronger, more skilled than Garcia. He was dominating, landing punches at will, breaking Garcia down. By the 11th round, Gabriel was in complete control, and then he landed a left hook. Garcia collapsed. He hit the canvas hard. The referee counted him out. Gabriel Ruelas had successfully defended his championship. But Garcia didn't get up. Medical personnel rushed into the ring. Garcia was unconscious, unresponsive. He was rushed to the hospital. Brain swelling, emergency surgery, coma. 13 days later, Jimmy Garcia died. He never regained consciousness. Gabriel Ruelas was devastated. He had killed a man in the ring. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but the result was the same. Jimmy Garcia was dead, and Gabriel's punches had caused it. Gabriel went into a deep depression. He questioned everything. Could he continue boxing? Should he continue? How could he step into a ring again knowing what he was capable of doing to another human being? But Gabriel had a family to support. He had a title to defend. He had responsibilities. So after taking time off, after attending Garcia's funeral, after soul-searching and grieving, Gabriel Ruelas returned to the ring. But he was different now. Changed. Haunted. In December 1995, Gabriel defended his title against Azuma Nelson, a legendary fighter. Gabriel lost a close, controversial split decision. His championship was gone. In September 1996, Gabriel tried to regain his title, facing the new champion, Genaro Hernandez. Gabriel lost again, this time more decisively, getting stopped in the 6th round. Gabriel Ruelas was no longer a champion. He was 25 years old, and many people thought his best days were behind him. The tragedy of Jimmy Garcia, they said, had broken something inside him. But Gabriel wasn't done. He won his next 3 fights in 1997, fighting his way back into contention. And then he got the call. He would face Arturo Gatti on October 4, 1997 in Atlantic City for the vacant IBF super featherweight title. This was Gabriel's chance at redemption, his chance to reclaim championship glory, his chance to prove that Jimmy Garcia's death hadn't ended his career. He would have to go through Thunder Gatti to do it. The build-up, the fight between Arturo Gatti and Gabriel Ruelas, was highly anticipated in boxing circles, though it didn't have the mainstream attention of a heavyweight championship or a mega fight like the Tyson-Holyfield rematch that had happened just 3 months earlier. But hardcore boxing fans knew this was going to be special. They knew both fighters' styles, they knew both men's hearts. They knew that when you put two aggressive, never-back-down warriors in a ring together, something explosive was going to happen. The IBF super featherweight title was vacant after the previous champion had moved up in weight. Both Gatti and Ruelas were ranked contenders, and the IBF sanctioned their fight for the vacant championship. For Gatti, this was the moment he'd been working toward his entire career. At 25 years old, he was in his prime. His record stood at 27-2 with 22 knockouts. He'd never fought for a world title before. This was his shot, his one chance to prove he belonged among the elite. Gatti trained obsessively for the fight. He knew Gabriel Ruelas was dangerous, experienced, a former champion. Gatti would need to be at his absolute best. He worked on his conditioning, his power, his combinations. But mostly he prepared his mind. Because Gatti knew something about himself, he knew he could take punishment. He knew he could survive storms. He knew he could win wars. "I'm ready to die in that ring if I have to," Gatti said during the build-up. "Gabriel Ruelas is a great fighter, a former champion, but October 4th is my night. I'm taking that belt home." For Gabriel Ruelas, this fight represented something more than just a championship. It was about redemption, about proving he was still an elite fighter, about honoring the memory of Jimmy Garcia by being the best fighter he could be. Gabriel trained in Los Angeles with his brother Rafael and their team. He studied tapes of Gatti, looking for weaknesses, patterns, opportunities. Gabriel knew Gatti was tough, aggressive, willing to trade. Gabriel would need to be smart, pick his shots, not get drawn into a brawl. "Arturo Gatti is a warrior, and I respect that," Gabriel said in pre-fight interviews. "But I've been in wars before, I've been a champion, I know what it takes. I'm going to win this fight and become champion again." The stage was set. Atlantic City, October 4th, 1997, 2 warriors, 1 title, no quarter asked, none given. Fight night, the atmosphere. The Boardwalk Convention Hall in Atlantic City was packed with about 5,000 fans. It wasn't Madison Square Garden or the MGM Grand, but for the hardcore boxing fans who made the trip, this was exactly where they wanted to be. Atlantic City had a special place in boxing history. It was a blue-collar city, a gambling town, a place where fighters came to make their names or destroy their legacies. The crowd that showed up for Gatti Ruelas was a true boxing crowd, knowledgeable, passionate, ready for war. When Gabriel Ruelas made his entrance, the crowd gave him a respectful reception. He looked focused, determined, ready. He wore blue trunks and had his team around him, his brother Rafael, his trainers, his cornermen. Gabriel shadowboxed as he walked, staying loose, staying warm. His face was a mask of concentration. Then Arturo Gatti emerged, and the arena erupted. Gatti had a significant portion of the crowd on his side, Italian-Americans from New Jersey and New York, Canadian fans who had made the trip, and local Atlantic City supporters who had adopted him as one of their own. Gatti fed off the energy. He looked like a man possessed, ready to go to war. Gatti wore white trunks with red trim. He bounced on his toes, threw combinations at the air, his eyes locked on the ring. This was his moment, his destiny. When both fighters were in the ring, referee Tony Orlando called them to the center for final instructions. Orlando was an experienced referee who had worked many big fights, but even he might not have been prepared for what was about to happen. "I want a good, clean fight," Orlando told them. "Protect yourselves at all times, obey my commands, touch gloves, and let's have a great fight." Gatti and Ruelas touched gloves, staring at each other, neither blinking, neither showing any fear. Then they returned to their corners. The crowd was on its feet. The bell was about to ring, and for the next few minutes these two men would create something magical, something terrifying, something unforgettable. Round 1, the opening statement. Ding! The opening bell rang, and both fighters moved to the center of the ring with purpose. No feeling out process, no tentative jabs, no caution. From the very first second, Gatti and Ruelas began exchanging punches. Gatti came forward aggressively, as was his style. He threw a left hook to the body, followed by a right hand upstairs. Ruelas countered with a sharp jab and a left hook of his own. The sound of leather on flesh filled the arena. The crowd was immediately on its feet. This was what they'd come to see. Gatti pressed forward, throwing combinations, trying to establish his physical presence. Ruelas stood his ground, not backing up, meeting Gatti in the center of the ring and firing back. Both men landed clean shots. Neither seemed bothered by the punishment. About a minute into the round, Gatti caught Ruelas with a hard right hand that snapped Gabriel's head back. The crowd roared. But Ruelas didn't retreat. Instead, he fired back with a 3-punch combination of his own, catching Gatti flush. This was already developing into exactly what everyone had predicted: a war. For the rest of the round, both fighters stood in front of each other and traded punches. Hooks, crosses, uppercuts, everything thrown with bad intentions. The technique was solid but not perfect. This wasn't a boxing clinic. This was a fight, raw and pure. When the bell rang, ending the first round, both fighters returned to their corners, breathing hard but looking energized. The crowd gave them a standing ovation. 1 round in, and everyone in the building knew they were witnessing something special. In the corners, both trainers worked quickly. Water, ice, advice. "Keep your hands up," Gatti's corner told him. "Work the body," Ruelas' corner instructed. But both fighters were thinking the same thing. "I can hurt this guy. I can break him. I can win this fight." Round 2. The escalation. When round 2 began, both fighters came out even more aggressively than in the first round. The tentative respect was gone. Now it was about pride, about dominance, about who could impose their will. Gatti came forward like a freight train. He threw a left hook to Ruelas' body that landed with a sickening thud. Ruelas grimaced but immediately fired back, catching Gatti with an overhand right that landed clean on the temple. Gatti took the punch, shook his head slightly, and kept coming. The exchange continued. Gatti pressing forward, Ruelas standing his ground. Neither man was willing to give an inch. The punches came in bunches, combinations flowing from both fighters. About 90 seconds into the round, Ruelas caught Gatti with a perfect left hook that stopped Arturo in his tracks. For a brief moment, Gatti's legs looked unsteady. The crowd gasped, but Gatti didn't go down. Instead, he fired back immediately, landing a hard right hand that caught Ruelas on the chin. Now it was Gabriel who looked momentarily hurt. This was insane. Both fighters were landing bombs, both were getting hurt, and neither was backing down. The intensity continued to build. Gatti and Ruelas were now fighting in phone booth range. So close that referee Tony Orlando occasionally had to step in and separate them when they got tangled up. But every time Orlando gave them space, they immediately came back together and started trading again. With about 30 seconds left in the round, Gatti landed a devastating right hand that caught Ruelas flush on the jaw. Gabriel's knees buckled. The crowd exploded. For a moment, it looked like Gatti might get a knockdown. But Ruelas, showing the heart of a champion, grabbed onto Gatti and held on, buying time for his head to clear. Orlando broke them apart. "You okay?" he asked Ruelas. Gabriel nodded, still hurt but not finished. The round ended moments later. Ruelas walked back to his corner on unsteady legs. He'd survived, but barely. In Gatti's corner, his team was ecstatic. "You heard him! You heard him bad! Keep the pressure on!" they shouted. In Ruelas's corner, his team worked frantically. Cold water, ice on the neck, smelling salts. You're okay, they told Gabriel. "Box him, move, don't stand in front of him." But Gabriel Ruelas didn't know how to not stand and fight. That wasn't his style. That wasn't who he was. The third round was about to begin, and it would be the round that defined both men's careers. Round 3, the turning point. When the bell rang for round 3, Gabriel Ruelas came out looking to establish control. He'd been hurt at the end of round 2, but he was recovered now and he was angry. Time to remind Gatti who the former champion was. Gabriel came out boxing beautifully. He used his jab to keep Gatti at range. He circled to his right, making Gatti follow him. He picked his shots carefully, landing clean punches without taking unnecessary damage. For the first minute of the round, this was Gabriel's round. He was outboxing Gatti, making him miss, countering effectively. The crowd, which had been firmly behind Gatti, gave Ruelas respectful applause for his tactical adjustments. But then Gatti adjusted too. About 90 seconds into the round, Gatti cut off the ring, cornering Ruelas against the ropes. Gabriel tried to spin away, but Gatti was on him, throwing combinations to the head and body. Ruelas fired back. He always fired back, but Gatti was landing the heavier shots now. A left hook to the body doubled Ruelas over slightly. A right uppercut snapped his head back. The momentum was shifting, and then, with about a minute left in the round, it happened. Gatti threw a left hook to the body. That landed perfectly right on Ruelas's liver. It was the kind of punch that short-circuits the nervous system, the kind that makes strong men crumble. Ruelas's face contorted in agony. His hands dropped slightly, his body sagged. Gatti saw it immediately. He pounced, a right hand to the head, a left hook, another right hand. Ruelas was hurt, badly hurt, covering up but still standing. The crowd was in a frenzy. This looked like it might be over. But somehow, impossibly, Gabriel Ruelas fought back. Even hurt, even in tremendous pain, he started throwing punches. Wild punches, desperate punches, but punches nonetheless. And then Ruelas did something that shocked everyone in the building. He hurt Gatti. With about 20 seconds left in the round, Ruelas, still hurt himself, still in pain from the body shot, landed a perfect right hand that caught Gatti right on the button. Gatti's legs went rubbery, his eyes glazed over slightly. Now it was Gatti who was in trouble. Ruelas, running on pure adrenaline and heart, pressed forward, throwing bombs, trying to finish the fight. Left hook, right hand. Left hook again. Gatti covered up, backed against the ropes, taking punishment, trying to survive. The bell rang. Both fighters staggered back to their corners, both hurt, both exhausted, both having nearly finished the other. The crowd was going absolutely insane. People were on their feet, screaming, some crying, all completely absorbed in the drama unfolding before them. In the corners, both trainers worked frantically on their fighters. This was a war of attrition now. This was about who could recover faster, who wanted it more, who could dig deeper. "You almost had him," Gatti's corner screamed. "Keep the pressure, he's breaking." "You hurt him, you can win this," Ruelas's corner shouted. "Box him! Move! Don't trade with him!" But moving, boxing, being defensive, that wasn't in either man's DNA. They were fighters. They were warriors. They were going to stand and trade until one of them couldn't anymore. Round 4. The war intensifies. Round 4 began, and somehow, incredibly, impossibly, the intensity increased even more. Both fighters came out swinging. Gatti pressed forward. Ruelas stood his ground. They met in the center of the ring and began trading punches at a pace that seemed unsustainable. Gatti landed a hard right hand. Ruelas countered with a left hook. Gatti threw a combination to the body. Ruelas fired back to the head, punch after punch after punch. Neither man defending much, both fully committed to offense. This wasn't boxing anymore. This was something primal, something beyond technique or strategy. This was two men testing the absolute limits of human endurance and will. About halfway through the round, Gatti landed another devastating body shot. Ruelas grimaced, his face showing pain, but he didn't stop throwing. He couldn't stop. His pride wouldn't let him. The crowd was in a state of pandemonium. People were screaming, themselves hoarse. Some fans had tears streaming down their faces, overwhelmed by the courage and heart they were witnessing. With about a minute left in the round, both fighters were showing serious signs of fatigue. Their punches were still powerful but slightly slower. Their breathing was labored. Sweat poured off both men, but neither would give an inch. Gatti caught Ruelas with a right hand that opened a cut over Gabriel's left eye. Blood started flowing down Ruelas' face. The crowd gasped. This was getting dangerous now. But Ruelas didn't seem to notice or care about the blood. He kept fighting, kept throwing, kept pushing forward. With seconds left in the round, both fighters stood in the center of the ring and exchanged one final flurry of punches. When the bell rang, they both lowered their hands and stared at each other for a moment of mutual respect between warriors. Then they turned and walked to their corners. The cut man in Ruelas' corner immediately went to work on the cut, trying to stop the bleeding. It wasn't terrible. Cuts above the eye bleed profusely but aren't always serious. But it was another piece of damage, another point of concern. In Gatti's corner, his trainers were trying to get him to conserve energy. "You're winning," they told him. "Don't try to knock him out. Box him. Be smart." But Arturo Gatti didn't know how to be smart in the ring. He knew how to fight. That's all he knew. That's all he wanted to do. The fight was entering its final phase. One of these men was going to break. The question was, who? Round 5, the beginning of the end. When round 5 began, it was clear that both fighters were running on fumes. 4 rounds of absolute warfare had taken their toll, but their hearts, their pride, their desire to win, those things hadn't diminished at all. Gatti came forward again, always forward. That was his way. He threw a jab, then a right hand. Ruelas countered with a left hook, but something had changed. Ruelas' punches didn't have quite the same snap anymore. His legs weren't quite as steady. The accumulation of damage, the body shots, the head shots, the sheer exhaustion was catching up with him. Gatti sensed it. Like a predator sensing weakness, he pressed harder. A combination to the body. An uppercut that snapped Ruelas' head back. A left hook that caught Gabriel on the temple. Ruelas was still fighting back, still throwing punches, but he was hurt now. Really hurt. His face was swelling. Blood continued to flow from the cut above his eye. His breathing was labored. About 2 minutes into the round, Gatti caught Ruelas with a perfectly placed right hand that landed right on the point of the chin. It wasn't the hardest punch Gatti had thrown all night, but it was the most perfectly placed. Ruelas' knees buckled. He stumbled backward, his arms windmilling, trying to maintain balance. Gatti pounced. He threw a left hook that caught Ruelas on the side of the head. Then a right hand. Then another left hook. Ruelas was against the ropes now, covering up, trying to survive, but Gatti was relentless. He threw combinations, head, body, every punch thrown with the intention of ending the fight. Referee Tony Orlando moved closer, watching carefully. His job was to protect the fighters, and Ruelas was taking tremendous punishment. But Gabriel was still trying to fight back. Even against the ropes, even hurt, he was throwing punches, wild punches, desperate punches, but the fight was still in him. And then Gatti landed it. A left hook from hell. It caught Ruelas perfectly on the jaw. Gabriel's eyes rolled back. His body went rigid for a split second, then completely limp. He collapsed to the canvas like a building that had just had its foundation removed. He fell straight down, landing on his side, completely unconscious before he hit the canvas. The crowd gasped. The arena went silent for a split second, that moment of collective shock when everyone realizes they've just witnessed something devastating. Referee Tony Orlando immediately waved his arm, signaling the fight was over. No count necessary. Gabriel Ruelas was unconscious. Medical personnel rushed into the ring. Ruelas' corner team jumped through the ropes, racing to their fighter's side. Arturo Gatti, meanwhile, didn't celebrate immediately. He walked to a neutral corner, then turned to look at Ruelas on the canvas. For a moment, Gatti's face showed concern. Was Gabriel okay? Had he hurt him too badly? But then Gatti saw Gabriel begin to stir. Ruelas' eyes fluttered open. He was conscious again, trying to figure out where he was, what had happened. The medical team helped Gabriel to a sitting position. They checked his eyes, his responses. Slowly, carefully, they helped him to his feet. The crowd, which had been silent in shock, now erupted in applause, not just for Gatti's victory, but for Gabriel Ruelas' incredible courage and heart. Both fighters had just put on one of the greatest displays of warrior spirit in boxing history. The aftermath, immediate. As Gabriel Ruelas was helped to his corner, still dazed but conscious and responsive, Arturo Gatti's team flooded the ring to celebrate with their champion. The ring announcer made it official. At 2 minutes 47 seconds of round 5, referee Tony Orlando stops the contest. The winner by technical knockout, a new IBF super featherweight champion of the world, Arturo "Thunder" Gatti. The crowd roared. Gatti was lifted onto his cornerman's shoulders. The championship belt was brought into the ring and fastened around his waist. Arturo Gatti had done it. After years of grinding, years of hard fights, years of proving himself, he was finally a world champion. But even in his moment of triumph, Gatti showed class. As soon as he could, he walked over to Gabriel Ruelas, who was now sitting on his stool, recovering. Gatti embraced him, said something in his ear that the cameras couldn't pick up. Ruelas, still hurt and disappointed, nodded and hugged Gatti back. It was a moment of mutual respect between two warriors who had just been through hell together. In the post-fight interviews in the ring, Gatti was emotional. "This is what I've dreamed about my whole life," he said, tears in his eyes. "Gabriel Ruelas is a true warrior. He pushed me harder than anyone ever has. But this is my time. I'm the champion now." When asked about his performance, Gatti was honest. "I hurt him to the body early and I just kept the pressure on, but man, he hurt me too. This was the hardest fight of my life. But I knew I could dig deeper. I knew I could go to places other fighters can't go. And I did." Gabriel Ruelas, when he was able to speak to the media, was gracious in defeat. "Arturo fought a great fight," Gabriel said. "He was the better man tonight. He got me with a great shot. I have no excuses. I gave everything I had. Sometimes it's just not enough." When asked if he would continue fighting, Gabriel paused. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I need to think about it. I need to talk to my family. This sport, it takes everything from you." The medical concerns. After the fight, both fighters were taken to a local hospital for precautionary examinations. This was standard procedure after a knockout, but given the brutal nature of the fight and the amount of punishment both men had absorbed, the doctors wanted to be thorough. Gabriel Ruelas underwent a CT scan to check for any brain trauma. The scan came back clean. No bleeding, no swelling, no serious damage. He was diagnosed with a concussion and kept overnight for observation. Arturo Gatti, despite winning the fight, had also taken significant damage. He was examined for possible broken ribs from the body shots Ruelas had landed. X-rays showed no fractures but severe bruising. He was also treated for cuts and swelling on his face. Both fighters were released from the hospital the next day with instructions to rest and avoid any physical activity for several weeks. The fight had been so brutal, so intense, that some boxing writers and commentators questioned whether it was worth it. Had both men shortened their careers? Had they taken years off their lives? But for the fighters themselves, there was no question. This was what they did. This was who they were. They were warriors, and warriors fight. The reaction, fight of the year. In the days and weeks following the fight, the boxing world couldn't stop talking about Gatti vs. Ruelas. Ring magazine, the sport's most prestigious publication, named it Fight of the Year for 1997. In their article, they wrote, Arturo Gatti and Gabriel Ruelas engaged in one of the most thrilling, brutal, and courageous displays of fighting spirit we've ever witnessed. This wasn't just a great fight. This was a testament to the warrior spirit that makes boxing great. Boxing commentators called it one of the best action fights of the decade. Max Kellerman, who would later become one of Gatti's biggest supporters and a close friend, said, "That fight announced to the world that Arturo Gatti was something special. Not just a fighter, but a warrior willing to go to war every single time." The fight became required viewing for boxing fans. VHS tapes of the fight sold incredibly well. It was replayed on ESPN's Top 10 shows. It was shown in boxing gyms around the world as an example of heart, courage, and determination. For Arturo Gatti, the victory was life-changing. He went from being a prospect to being a star. His fan base exploded. Suddenly, everyone wanted to see Thunder Gatti fight. For Gabriel Ruelas, the loss was devastating but not career-ending. In fact, his performance earned him tremendous respect. He'd shown incredible heart, incredible courage. He hadn't quit, hadn't stopped trying to win, even when hurt and exhausted. The birth of a legend. The Gatti versus Ruelas fight was the moment that Arturo Gatti became Thunder Gatti, the people's champion, one of the most beloved fighters of his generation. Over the next several years, Gatti would go on to have many more memorable fights. He would defend his title multiple times. He would move up in weight class and win another championship. He would engage in an epic trilogy with Irish Mickey Ward that would be considered among the greatest trilogies in boxing history. But it all started on October 4th, 1997 in Atlantic City against Gabriel Ruelas. Gatti's fighting style, aggressive, willing to take punishment to dish it out, always exciting, always entertaining, made him a fan favorite. HBO would feature him regularly on their boxing broadcasts. Atlantic City would become his second home, with thousands of fans making the trip every time Gatti fought there. Gatti wasn't the most technically skilled fighter. He wasn't the biggest puncher. He wasn't the fastest or the most defensively sound. But he had something that couldn't be taught: heart. And fans loved him for it. "I fight for my fans," Gatti would often say. "They come to see me give everything I have. They come to see a war, and I'm going to give them a war every single time." Gabriel Ruelas. Life after the fight. For Gabriel Ruelas, the loss to Gatti was difficult to accept. He'd given everything he had and come up short. At age 26, with 2 world title losses in his last 3 fights, many people thought his championship days were behind him. Gabriel fought 3 more times in 1998, winning all 3 fights, but none were for a title. He was trying to rebuild, trying to work his way back into title contention. In 1999, Gabriel got another shot at a world title, facing Joel Casamayor for the WBA Super Featherweight Championship. Gabriel lost by knockout in the 11th round. It was another devastating defeat. Gabriel continued fighting sporadically through the early 2000s, but he was no longer the elite fighter he'd once been. The wars had taken their toll. The tragedy of Jimmy Garcia still haunted him. The loss to Gatti had broken something inside him. Gabriel Ruelas retired from boxing in 2006 with a record of 44 wins, 7 losses, and 32 knockouts. He'd been a world champion. He'd been in wars with the best fighters of his generation. He'd shown incredible courage and heart. But he'd also paid a price. Like many fighters, Gabriel struggled after retirement. He dealt with depression, financial problems, health issues related to the damage he'd taken in the ring. In interviews years later, Gabriel spoke honestly about the cost of being a warrior. "Boxing gave me everything," he said. "But it also took everything. I have no regrets, but I paid a price. We all pay a price in this sport." The Gatti-Ward trilogy. While the Gatti-Ruelas fight was the moment that made Arturo Gatti a star, it was his trilogy with Mickey Ward that would cement his legacy as one of the greatest action fighters of all time. From 2002 to 2003, Gatti and Ward fought 3 times. Each fight was an instant classic, a brutal war that pushed both men to their absolute limits. Ward won the first fight by knockout in the 9th round in one of the most dramatic rounds in boxing history. Gatti came back to win the second fight by decision. Gatti won the rubber match by decision as well. The 3 fights were so spectacular, so brutal, so filled with heart and courage that they became the gold standard for action fights. They showed everything that was great about boxing. 2 warriors giving everything they had for the entertainment of the fans, and it all traced back to that October night in 1997 against Gabriel Ruelas. That was the night that showed Gatti could be in these kinds of fights and win. That was the night that proved his heart was bigger than anyone else's. The tragic end: Arturo Gatti retired from boxing in 2007 with a record of 40 wins, 9 losses, and 31 knockouts. He was a 2-division world champion and a Hall of Fame fighter. He'd given fans countless memorable moments. He'd fought with a courage and heart that made him beloved worldwide. After retirement, Gatti seemed to be doing well. He'd made good money from his fighting career. He was married and had a son. He lived in Montreal and worked as a trainer and promoter, giving back to the sport that had given him so much. But on July 11, 2009, tragedy struck. Arturo Gatti was found dead in his hotel room in Brazil, where he was vacationing with his wife and son. He was only 37 years old. The circumstances of his death were controversial and remain disputed to this day. Initially, Brazilian authorities ruled it a suicide, death by strangulation using the strap of his wife's purse. However, many people, including Gatti's family and friends, believed he was murdered. His wife was initially arrested but later released without charges when authorities ruled his death a suicide. An independent investigation later suggested homicide was more likely than suicide, but no one was ever charged. The truth about what happened to Arturo Gatti in that hotel room may never be known. The boxing world was devastated. Gatti had been universally loved by fans, by fellow fighters, by media members. He was a good guy, a warrior in the ring, but gentle outside of it. His death at such a young age seemed impossibly cruel. Memorial services were held in Montreal and New Jersey. Thousands of fans came to pay their respects. Fellow fighters spoke about what Gatti had meant to them, to the sport, to the fans. Mickey Ward, Gatti's greatest rival and close friend, was particularly emotional. "Arturo was my brother," Ward said. "We went to war 3 times, but after that we were family. I loved him. Boxing lost one of the greatest warriors it's ever seen." The legacy today, nearly 3 decades after the Gatti-Ruelas fight, Arturo Gatti is remembered as one of the most exciting, courageous, and beloved fighters of his generation. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2013. The ceremony was emotional, with his family accepting the honor on his behalf. Mickey Ward gave the introduction speech, talking about their trilogy and the mutual respect and friendship they shared. The fight with Gabriel Ruelas remains one of the most watched fights from the 1990s. Boxing fans still seek it out, still show it to younger fans as an example of what boxing can be at its best. Gabriel Ruelas, now in his 50s, still watches the fight occasionally. In a 2020 interview, he reflected on that night. "I gave everything I had. I left it all in the ring. I have no regrets about that fight. Arturo was a great champion, a great fighter, a great warrior. I'm proud to have shared the ring with him. That fight will outlive both of us." The Gatti-Ruelas fight represents something important about boxing. The idea that sometimes greatness isn't about perfect technique or undefeated records. Sometimes greatness is about heart, about courage, about being willing to go to places most people can't imagine. Both men showed that on October 4th, 1997. Both men proved they were warriors. Both men created something that will be remembered forever. Lessons from the fight. What can we learn from the Gatti-Ruelas fight? First, it's a reminder that in boxing and in life, heart matters. Skill is important. Strategy is important, but the will to win, the refusal to quit, the courage to keep fighting when everything tells you to stop, those qualities can overcome a lot of disadvantages. Second, it's a lesson in respect. Despite the brutality of their fight, despite the fact that they were trying to knock each other unconscious, Gatti and Ruelas showed tremendous respect for each other. They embraced after the fight. They acknowledged each other's warrior spirit. That's what true competitors do. Third, it's a cautionary tale about the cost of being a warrior. Both men paid a price for their courage. Both took damage that likely affected their long-term health. Gabriel struggled with depression and financial problems. Arturo's life ended tragically young. The warrior spirit is admirable, but it comes with consequences. Fourth, it's a reminder of why people love boxing. Yes, it's violent. Yes, it's dangerous. But it also reveals something profound about human nature. Our capacity for courage, for endurance, for pushing beyond what we think are our limits. The technical breakdown. From a technical standpoint, the Gatti-Ruelas fight was interesting because both fighters largely abandoned defensive principles in favor of all-out offense. Gatti's strategy was simple. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Come forward, cut off the ring, land heavy shots to the body to slow Ruelas down, then go to the head. It wasn't complicated, but it was effective. Ruelas tried to box more, to use his jab and movement, but he kept getting drawn into exchanges. His pride wouldn't let him back down, and ultimately that cost him the fight. The key moment was those body shots in rounds 3 and 4. Gatti's left hooks to the body were devastating. They slowed Ruelas down, made it harder for him to move, made it harder for him to breathe. By round 5, Ruelas was running on empty, and that's when Gatti finished him. But let's be honest. Technical analysis almost seems beside the point with this fight. This wasn't about technique, this was about will. This was about who wanted it more. And on that night, Arturo Gatti wanted it more. The cultural impact. The Gatti-Ruelas fight had a significant impact on boxing culture in the late 1990s and early 2000s. It reminded people why they loved boxing. In an era when heavyweight boxing was struggling after the Tyson Bite fight and other controversies, the lighter weight classes were producing incredible action. Gatti-Ruelas showed what the sport could be at its best. It also helped establish Atlantic City as a major boxing destination. Gatti would fight there many more times, always bringing huge crowds. The city embraced him, and he embraced the city back. The fight influenced a generation of young fighters. They saw what Gatti did and wanted to emulate it. They wanted to be warriors like Thunder Gatti. They wanted to give fans their money's worth. They wanted to be the kind of fighter people remembered. Where are they now? Gabriel Ruelas, now in his early 50s, lives in California. He works as a boxing trainer, passing on his knowledge and experience to the next generation. He's involved in various boxing-related activities and occasionally appears at boxing events. Gabriel has been open about his struggles since retiring from boxing. He's dealt with health issues, financial problems, and the lingering effects of a career spent in brutal wars. But he's survived, and he's found ways to stay connected to the sport he loves. Arturo Gatti's legacy lives on through his family, his fans, and the countless fighters he inspired. His fights are still watched by new generations of boxing fans. His warrior spirit is still celebrated. His memory is honored. The Gatti-Ward trilogy has been turned into a documentary. Plans for a biopic about Gatti's life have been discussed for years. His image appears on murals in Montreal and New Jersey. He's remembered not just as a great fighter, but as a symbol of courage, heart, and determination. The final analysis. Looking back at the Gatti-Ruelas fight nearly 3 decades later, several things stand out. First, the sheer entertainment value. This was a fight that delivered everything fans could want: action, drama, courage, a definitive ending. It was worth every penny for anyone who watched it. Second, the humanity of it. Despite the violence, despite the brutality, this fight showed something beautiful about the human spirit. Our capacity to push ourselves beyond our limits, to show courage in the face of adversity, to earn respect through our actions. Third, the lasting impact. This wasn't just a great fight that was forgotten a week later. This fight defined both men's legacies. It launched Gatti to superstardom. It showed Ruelas' incredible heart, even in defeat. It became a benchmark against which all future action fights would be measured. Finally, the reminder of boxing's dual nature. Boxing can produce moments of incredible beauty, courage, and heroism. But it also extracts a terrible price from its warriors. Both Gatti and Ruelas paid that price. Their courage inspired millions, but it cost them dearly. Conclusion: the night 2 warriors became legends. October 4th, 1997, Atlantic City, New Jersey. 2 men stepped into a boxing ring with everything on the line. One was a champion seeking redemption. The other was a challenger seeking his destiny. For 5 rounds, they went to war. They traded punches that would have felled lesser men. They showed courage that most people can't imagine. They pushed themselves to the absolute limit of human endurance. When it was over, one man was unconscious on the canvas and the other was a world champion. But both were legends. The fight between Arturo Gatti and Gabriel Ruelas wasn't the most technically perfect boxing match ever. It wasn't fought for the heavyweight championship. It didn't have the mainstream attention of some mega fights. But for those who saw it, for those who understand what boxing represents at its purest level, it was perfect. It was everything a fight should be. It was 2 warriors testing themselves against each other and against their own limits. It was courage personified. It was the warrior spirit made manifest. Arturo "Thunder" Gatti became a legend that night. Gabriel Ruelas showed the heart of a champion even in defeat. Together they created something that will be remembered as long as people watch boxing. They went to hell and back. They gave everything they had. They left pieces of themselves in that ring. And they gave us a fight that will live forever. That's the legacy of October 4th, 1997. That's the legacy of Thunder Gatti and Gabriel Ruelas. That's the legacy of warrior.